everyone, welcome back to our channel, The Mustard Butterfly, a home for good, a home for change, a home for women. We're all about sharing the joy of eating well, knowing God and embracing the right mindset. And this month so far we're exploring the theme of identity and our holistic health. And today I have some friends with me and I've prepared a lovely nutritious meal for us to tuck into before we start our chat. And what do we have here? We've got roast potatoes with some herbs and some grilled tilapia fillets, and then we've got a lovely salad over there, and then a side of butter beans in parsley sauce. And yeah, so we're just gonna enjoy our meal before we carry on the chat.
Guys, I think we should pray. Yeah, God, thank you for these ladies. Thank you for an incredible lunch. Bless our conversations today and inspire us, and help us to inspire everyone watching, and give us joy. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Meg.
No props.
Okay, so we're gonna just get right into the chat. We're going speaking of still on identity, going to go around the table to ask my girls here to introduce themselves. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll go first. Hi all, my name is Yatunde. I work in the insurance industry and I'm really happy to be here, and I'm excited for us to delve into the world of just our identity and just getting to know ourselves.
Yeah. Hi all, I'm Christine. I am a lover of Jesus, first and foremost, and by profession, I am an actuary, and I'm also happy to be here. Very excited.
Thanks for coming.
Nice. Hi guys, I'm Meg. I'm an actor, and this just feels like the norm for us really. We've been coming around doing into that ages, just eating, talking. I guess today it's a kind of an inside film on our chat. What we do best.
Yeah. And obviously, as you know, I'm founder of the Mustard Butterfly, a product of love, as I've said before. And let's get into it. Okay, so I've got some questions here. I'm going to run through the girls, and then we'll just let it flow from there. First one is, if you could describe yourself in a sentence or in 3 words. How would you describe yourself?
Right. I think, I would say accepted, chosen, and loved, because these are the 3 words that have really kept me going in the midst of happy times as well as sad times, and that is in Christ. So I think for me that's what I hold on to.
Nice.
I love that. Yeah. I really do love that.
Yeah.
I think I could describe myself as an energetic person who aims to add value in every way, shape and form, and in every kind of relationship and sphere that I involve myself in. Value adding is really important to me.
Nice. Yeah, guys, I always sort of say that I'm like a flamingo, so like I'm pink, I'm bright, I love life, but as a woman I do kind of feel like I'm standing on one leg some of the time, quite a lot of the time, and women can balance, but it's kind of, sometimes it feels, like I'm standing on one leg, a bit weird, but...
I actually like how you put things into words, and it's very descriptive, it's interesting.
I could really picture it. It's so true. It matches you so well. What would I say about myself? I'm a product of love is the main thing I would say, and I am fragile yet strong. It just works together for me. That's just who I am. Okay, so let's get into identity. Did you go on an intentional journey to discover your identity, or did you just uncover it along the way? Because obviously I know we're not like too young.
Mature women.
We're not. Would you say?
I would say I didn't start out on an intentional journey, but the longer the journey's gone on for me, I would say then it has become an intentional journey. Like, wait a minute, who do I think I am? What is my identity rooted in? And it's kind of changed and evolved, and there's been things along the way. But I would say, yeah, I didn't start out to do that. What about you guys?
I definitely didn't start out seeking to understand it. Just by like, it just wasn't something that was in my on my mind. But I've along the way, as Meg said, I've kind of come to identify and kind of know certain aspects of who I am and where I stand on certain things and who I stand for as well. But I just think it's such a continuous. It's not linear. It's a process, and it's lifelong. You know, who we are now, as much as there's certain things that it's what our identities are rooted in. I think along the way things are going to change, and life will kind of come, and things will happen, and we'll recognize. Oh, okay, I really strongly want to toe this line, and I never thought about it before, and I never thought that it was so important to me, but now it's something I want to do. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say I was not conscious of the concept of identity, but in my own way, I think it's something that always resonated with me, even when I was like 13, 14, even in the simplest things where someone asks to do something, but then inside of me I'm like, that's not, I don't feel quite right about that. But but I wouldn't know whether that's a concept of being conscious about identity. But as I continued growing and then being exposed to like people and material out there, I was like, oh, okay. And then the Bible, once I came to like start my journey knowing about Christ, especially like you find the Bible just talking a lot about your identity. Like I remember when I used to read, I think the first days I read Ephesians, and there's this long, very long chapter that talks about who you are, but I don't think it really hit me. I was just like, okay, you're chosen, you're okay. But then as time continued, it's when through life's circumstances, and then you're forced to hold on to something.
Yeah, sure.
And then you're like, oh my goodness, what do I hold on to? And then you're like, wait, I'm accepted. So just because that person called me ugly, or that person, something comes back to, that. So I think I would say it's a mix of unintentional, but then also eventually becoming, oh, this is something I want to make sure I focus on.
I would say the same for me as well. I don't think I started off trying to figure out who I am, but I just stumbled on this path. But when I realized that I had to like find out who I was or who I am, then it became an intentional thing. So then I decided to make the changes around the things that I wasn't very keen on, and just accept the ones that I knew were never going to change.
Right.
And I love what you've all mentioned. You all mentioned like root. And so that leads on to our next question. What would you say has or is the biggest influence on your identity?
Wow. It's tricky, that for me, guys. What would you say?
There's a combination of things. I would say culture, tradition, family, but also ultimately and most importantly, God, and my faith in God, and the communities that I've now slowly as an adult kind of started like immersing myself in, and these have definitely had the biggest influences. But at the very beginning, as you grow as a child, it's your family, it's your siblings, your parents, and they heavily influence. And then if you come from quite strong cultural backgrounds as well, like there are rules and regulations, and we don't do this and we don't do that, and this is not how we do it. and those things can, and then sometimes you feel like they're kind of wrapped with like the bow of religion, but as you start to unpack it, as you grow, especially if you intentionally try to grow in your faith and understand really who God is and what this Christian faith is about, and that's a whole other conversation, obviously, but you then realize that some of these things that our culture and our traditions taught us and we thought were linked to Christ and the Bible, and are totally not. Then you really start to like shed these things, and then like and then that's mustard butterfly, like you literally like come out of that cocoon and really become who God wants you to be, and that's ultimately like my aim in life, is to really fulfill my calling. And at times I don't know if I totally know what that is. Although, as I said at the beginning, one thing I do know is that adding value is at the core of who God wants me to be.
Wow.
And if that's as a mother, I must add value. If that's as a wife, if that's as a friend, a sister, I must add value. I can't be a leech. I must be able to offer something to you. So yeah, that would be my response. What about you, Meg?
That's really
bold.
That is really bold. I mean, my mind is blown. Fully blown. Oh my goodness. I would say, I'd say that my identity is rooted in God, but also for me personally, I find it really hard to not have all these extra influences just kind of coming in at the same time, things of the world, things in magazines, things on Instagram, like, I know, I know it is God, but for me it's kind of, the flamingo on one leg is kind of wobbling with all these things going on.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
It's not.
I love what you said about adding value. That is just, it's beautiful. That's such a beautiful concept, because so often people pursue calling so hotly, like, what is my calling, what is my calling? But the idea that the calling is the value adding wherever you go is like, wow, that's universal. You take that everywhere, don't you? But that's woolly, guys. Sorry, can I pass it to Christine?
What is currently the source of my identity? I made a conscious choice that will only be rooted in Christ, and I think, guys, like I'm just, it's not Christianese. It's just
it's just because what that looks like.
It's just because when you get to there's a for me, I've come to this point where I've grown in love with God, and He's by His grace, He's helped me to get there, such that I just can't picture any other
way of life.
So, but was it always like this? No. And even when I say I choose to, I go back to what even Meg, what you just said. Like, the thing is, there's still a lot of forces like trying to pull you apart, but you have to sit and be like, I choose this. I choose this. So that's what I will say. What I choose. But then, of course, there is.
The forces are strong.
There is a lot.
The forces are so strong. I can't imagine. I mean, the current generation, like it's really scary that there's so many things contending for our attention. So many things, and it can be really frivolous things, but it can even be like things that we as a generation now deem serious, in terms of like, there's this, I've noticed there's this real thing in some churches and some groups now where there's a thing about your purpose, and sometimes I even think that's a distraction. It's like there's so many things that are pulling us in different directions, and so many things that's telling us this is how we should be, and then even society and the doctrines of the past that has told us that as women we should be a certain type of way, and we should be meek and quiet. Meg was, before the camera started rolling, was kind of teaching us about speaking from our lower register, but that's something that you don't take into consideration, but sometimes like we were taught to kind of be a bit more damsel in distress. speaking from your core and with confidence and conviction. You know, these are things that it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's the crux of it. It's not easy, and I don't. Unfortunately, I don't see it getting easier.
Yeah.
In the way life is going, and that's like newsflash. Like I don't see it getting easier, but I guess it's these things that we've all said in terms of being rooted in Christ and growing in love by God's grace, and understanding that even like our ability to love Him. The way we do is not by our own power, because I always have to remind myself I don't love God because I'm just a lover of Christ. Like I love God because He's given me the grace to, and He loved me first. And even now, where as much as I love God, I know I still do things that He gives me side eye for. You know, He's so gracious towards us. But I really I do feel for like I think about what it will be like for my children. When I do have children, and what are they going to be contending with?
And I think I love what you said about value adding and all of that, and I think this is why it would help to so I think when we try to define our identity, like put labels on it, I think that's when we run into these issues, because like there's always something new, right?
Yeah, of course.
And that's why it's nice when you have a blanket, like a root, and everything just flows out of that. So even if you're put in a different country, that value adding, yes, it might come through in a different industry to what you're in now, or in a different
sphere,
the person of you stays the same, because you haven't just said, oh, my identity is that I'm a teacher or I'm an HR consultant. Do you see what I mean? Because I feel like a lot of times, or back then, that would be my typical, that's my typical thing, like, oh, when people ask who are you, it's very much what do you do, because that's what we spend most of our time doing. But I think it's very important that we get it rooted in one thing that really is not, that thing is not changing. Everything else might change around it, but then that thing is just, it's the source, it's the core of everything. And I think it's always good to identify that, because it just helps you navigate certain decisions. Like, oh, you don't have to jump on every trend. You can if that's part of your identity, but it will just help you stay a bit directed, is what I think.
And I want to say that we also shouldn't neglect this, that most of us here are also lucky to come from great families that also help us and have been like guides as we discover our identity as well. And that's also, I would say, my family, I talk about them all the time, but they're also a massive influence. And none of us are perfect, but you know, they've always just trusted me and supported me in my journeys with Christ. But they've supported me, and I know that for the rest of us it's the same. And I felt safe to explore all these different, as I said, unintentional, you know, parts of my journey. And so I just don't want us to neglect that the family as well. Family and friends are deep influences as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna, again, based off of that, you said family plays a big part in your identity. Okay, so now the older you get, how do you try to, or if you do, how do you avoid like meeting up to the expectations, because they have such an influence, and that means they have things that they want you to do. They have a lot of expectations for you. So how do you, if your identity that you now know, like value adding in the way that you know it, doesn't match their expectations for you, how do you navigate that? Because I think sometimes for me, I that's the struggle for me. I know what will please and what is expected and how I should be. It's not really how I want to, or how God, you know, wants me to go about things. So how do
Christine,
realistically?
Do you have a way of navigating it? It would be interesting, because I think, do you know why I wanted to say? Because I know that in terms like Kenyans are quite different from Nigerians in terms of even like culturally and maybe the way in which they approach things, and then obviously in the culture and in the English culture would be different. But I mean, I know that we come from the same place, so.
Well, you know, even with that culture, I feel like family.
That's true, actually. Family.
The culture within a family is just so different.
Because there's some very inner families like my family, where they're very very want to know and like want to be involved, and then there's some more like, you know, laid back families. So, but
actually, I'll let Kristen and then Meg, because I know you live far further from family.
Exactly, that's another point as well.
So how do you navigate that?
This is a very, very interesting question. I'm trying to just think around, and maybe let's start from the point of influence does not have to necessarily be negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
But even if it's not negative, as Dorian said, it might not represent who you are or what you're
becoming.
Yeah, what you want to become. Honestly, I think being away from what I've known most of my life is, I don't want to say freeing. I don't want to say freeing. What I mean is having to be, because literally it's like being plucked out of Kenya and then coming and starting a new life here.
Right.
Having to, like, okay, so friends, start forming new social circles and so on and so forth. But I feel like there's a sense of freedom that comes with being away from things that you've known for so long, because I've had a chance to step back and ask, why do I do this? Do I do this because it's me, or do I do this because I was raised in a place where it was just normal? And that's why I was saying freeing in a way. Mom, dad,
Bird.
I love you guys, like, no, but I think that's the number one thing. In fact, this morning I was thinking about how I've grown so much over the last 3 years, and the growth has come from just discovering myself as an individual. What do I treasure, what do I not treasure? What are some of those things that are inside of me that I know God needs to fix? And so I think that's the biggest advantage for me that I've gotten from being here, moving.
Yeah, I guess for me personally, it's a tricky one. I think it's hard, like, even now, I ring my mom about everything, every single decision I'm making. Oh, Mom, what do you think? Mom, what do you think? Or Dad, what do you think? I always ring them. My family approval matters a lot to me, and my sisters as well, and you want to feel like you fit. But at the same time, like, I think it's really important to really maintain our sense of alignment. Does that make sense? Like, you know, when you make a decision and you could ring everyone in the world, all your people, everyone you're close to, and if you feel that off feeling where you're not aligned in yourself, then you're never going to really rest in the decision or the things that you're doing. So, like, I mean, guys, what do you think? What does approval really come down to? What do we think it is going to give us? I know that's kind of extending your question a bit, Dorian, but what do we think that's going to give us if we could go around and everyone in our lives gave us a thumbs up and said, right, we approve, but you still felt that disalignment? I mean, or feeling the disalignment is also sometimes that disalignment with God as well. And people don't know, even the people closest to you don't know your relationship with God like you do. And it's a tough one. It's hard not to be influenced by that and also the world and all these complex things. But ultimately, I guess seeking that alignment with God is really key.
So I love
alignment.
I like alignment.
And I think, sorry, you were going to say something, but I think just before I lose my train of thought, I think alignment is very, very important, because I believe that we're all created. There's only one of Meg, and there's only one of Christine, Yetunde, and myself. So, and only you can really discover that. And what you said about if everybody says yes, that's great, but you don't feel right, how would you show up day to day?
Right.
Who is showing up day to day? Not them.
No.
Because half of them are even like miles away. How do you show up on a day to day if you don't feel? And it's not even feeling; it's just knowing. And I think alignment is definitely something that comes from knowing your creator, like knowing the manual, like knowing the source, knowing what he says you should do. That's how I see alignment. And I think it's so important that you said that. even with society as well, like
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah. Oh god.
If
Yeah.
everybody's saying you must turn up in a particular lip shade, and I'm gonna take it there because women is very.
Mhm.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
how we look. If everybody's saying you have to look, there's a standard to look like. Well, you don't. It's not you.
Mm.
It just makes you feel so out of
Yeah.
space, out of place. Then, you know, how do you really turn up without, you know, feeling
Yeah.
uncomfortable all the time?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to feel uncomfortable with not pleasing everybody and not
Yeah.
and everybody not supporting that particular decision.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, but it's again back to what you said, alignment on what's more important. Is it, as you said, is it that everybody says, yeah, do that, and then you walk in and you're like, oh my god, this was the worst decision I ever made. Or people say do that, and then you sit with yourself and you sit with God and you're like, God, lead me, guide me, like the spirit of discernment, come, like teach me. And then it says no, don't do it, and then you go in and you don't do it, and then you feel the joy that can only come from being in the right steed with Christ and God. There's nothing better than that, and sometimes we do have to close the door and shut ourselves out and shut ourselves away from certain things. And at times it is. I mention how much I love my family and how much they approve of. Like I'm like Meg in the sense that I call my mum for everything. I want to buy this. I call my mum. Oh, my sister. I want to buy a new dress. I call my sister. I'm like, do you think this color or do you think this cut? You know. But I know that when it's time to make certain decisions in my life, I know that that's when I have to close. I have to just shut the door, figuratively and even sometimes physically, if you're lucky to have the space to do that physically, and sit with yourself and sit with Christ and meditate on His Word and pray and listen, because that's something that's been coming that I've been learning a lot lately.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just praying.
I'm talking, but don't listen.
I'm not listening. It's a one-way traffic, and so actually
So
listen.
much.
And then in terms of society, I think we know social media is a terror, you know, on us, on our mind and our well-being, on our, you know, and our decision making. So at times you have to delete it.
Yeah.
Be it Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, delete it. Even if it's for a short time, delete it.
To refocus.
To refocus,
align
to really
again.
hear God and to really hear yourself. Like in the midst of all the noise, really hear yourself and what you want. And sometimes, you know, it's not something I've done as much this year, and I think to an extent the pandemic and lockdown hasn't necessarily helped put me in the mood and the spirit of it, but fasting. There's nothing more. There's not more like peaceful and clear time than during a fast and
What
after
is
a
a
fast. So what is a fast? And a fast comes in. Let me say, fasts come in many different ways. You know, traditionally what we were taught, and like in terms of what growing up in churches, a fast is from a certain time to a certain time you don't eat and you pray to God. It's important. Prayer is the important part, caveat in that, because without prayer during a fast, it's a hunger strike. Like, you know, you're not necessarily doing anything. But a fast can also come in other ways. Like you can fast from social media. You can say, I'm going to delete this app, and rather than picking up my phone first thing in the morning and going on social media, I pick up my Bible. I pick up my Bible app. I read the Word. I meditate on it. I grasp and learn something from it, and I go about my day. So but fast is really, and also I would like to note that fast isn't a way of getting something from God. Also, and I think that was a big lesson for me. Like I always believed that I fast in order to receive something, but really a fast is to really consecrate yourself and put yourself in a position where you can hear, where you're not you know, drowning in, oh, what am I gonna eat? you know, at this time, I'm really hungry. Or no, it's like a time where you can focus on what's important.
Yeah.
Like
so it just brings you back into alignment.
Again, it all goes back to that term, alignment. Like
Right.
it really brings you back to being aligned with God. So I think that's a way that in answer to your question, Doreen, is really sometimes, as much as you love the people around you, saying no, I don't want to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah.
Close the door, figuratively, physically, and also deleting these apps or these things that are constantly contending for our attention, and then also so distracting. And then also fasting, like that. It's so practical, and it's not easy because our flesh, right? But it's a way, even if it's 2 days, even if it's 1 day, where you don't, like, you know, just taking some time out to realign yourself and really get yourself, you know, in a good place to hear from God.
But how do you deal with FOMO? So with your family, you can. I guess I feel like it might be easier a little bit, but when it comes to society as a whole, how do you deal with the FOMO of you didn't see that, you didn't hear what happened on Instagram this week, the biggest trend or the biggest hashtag on Twitter, you did not hear it. How do you do it? Because, okay, personally, I'll speak for myself, because I'm not very active on Twitter. And generally on social media. I've come on social media more lately, but I'm not as active as a lot of people. I miss out on a lot of the trends. So yeah, how do you, and I don't really, it doesn't bother me, because I think over time I've learned to just let it not bother me. But in the initial stage of, this is something that has shaped you all these years, how do you create that separation?
I mean, don't you think that shouldn't there be a kind of fear of missing out on your life? Like, all of the time that we spend scrolling, we are missing out on our lives. Like, how can we redress this where actually we realise, oh, hang on a minute, I should be afraid of, like, what is actually happening in my life now. And the FOMO should be that way, not just constantly seeking other sources, other lives, other things going on. Yeah, it's really important to be informed, but guys, how can we redress that? How can we change that?
I think, sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but I think it comes down to loving yourself. If you love yourself so much, you will be conscious of not missing out on your life.
Yeah.
But when you're just so focused on others, overly focused on others, then, you know, I think that's what it is. Like, appreciating who your life in the way it is, appreciating,
And isn't that exactly what you just said? Isn't that now part of having an identity crisis? Because you don't know yourself.
You're looking out all the time.
So yes, it's always other voices that you need to feed you or to confirm or something.
Affirm you,
And I go back to what Meg, as well as you tuned there, about like calling family, friends, or, you know, the saying, too many cooks spoil the broth. Honestly, I feel like, and I've done that, I do that as well. I mean, I don't think there's anyone who doesn't, you know, sometimes call up people, but the confusion for me, because what I end up seeing is that I want to take an eighth of what Meg said, an eighth of what Itunde said, an eighth, and then and I'm trying to bring them all together, but they're so conflicting sometimes, and then you end up in this space of confusion. And for people who are perfectionists, that can be such a bad it can be a terrifying place to be, because as a perfectionist especially, you want everything to be perfect, but now you're like, oh my goodness, opinion A, opinion B, oh, what if I and I think,
do you have any examples, would you say, like when you came to making a decision on certain life decisions, like maybe going to uni, what course you chose, and the job you're in, and or even, I don't know, relationships. Do you have any examples, anything that you can pull out?
I think for me, what I can think of right now is the area of my career.
Yeah.
So of course, when I was younger, what influenced me at first was a book by Ben Carson. So in the book, he was like a neurosurgeon, but I was like, oh, he deals with the brain? Okay, fine. I'm going to go for the heart. Cardiologist, you know. I mean, that's just how I made up my first, idea of who do I want to be. So every time people would be like, who do you want to be? Cardiologist. And then the fact that I was also doing well in school, they'd be like, oh, perfect for you. You're you're intelligent, you're bright.
Yeah.
And then I did what we call like a, what is it called? Not an attachment, job shadowing at a hospital, at a physiotherapy department, and I could not even stand that. Like, I remember seeing,
and you want to be a cardiologist,
cardiologist, and I could not stand the pain that someone, there's one person, I think their hand, something, I think they'd been involved in an accident, and I couldn't stand seeing them breathe in pain. And I was like, Christine, please, like, if you can't do this, then just forget. Medicine is not for you. Then I was like, okay, so what else? And I was like, okay, economics and finance, you know. And then I went around talking to people. You're good in math. You're good at math. You're good at, it makes sense, you know. But then finally, but still, my parents, I remember they were into this whole medicine thing. Like, I think that was like their dream.
Of course.
And then I came to them once. After the economics and finance, I finally settled on something, and that was like the path I'm now on. And the history of this is also very story for another day. But so finally, I come to my parents and I'm like, I want to be an actuary. What is that? Where did you hear that from? Why are you allowing the world? Why are you allowing the world to influence you? And I'm like, well, it's kind of the same way you're trying to influence me to be a doctor, only that it's the world that's influencing me.
It's all influence.
But somehow they came to terms with that, and now I'm here. But yeah, that's a solid example, I can say.
Yeah, I like that, because that's a big, career choices are a big part of our lives, isn't it? So what influenced that actuary decision?
Honestly, someone mentioned it once, and I was like, what is that? And then I went to Google. I was like, what is this? And when I was reading more and more about it, I was like, this is something I think I'd be very interested in. And so that's how I ended up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And would you say generally we have an identity crisis in the world that we live in?
Without a shadow of a doubt.
And people don't know really that there is one. I think the biggest crisis of it is that people don't know that they're even having it.
People think they're so. People are so confident in their mess at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, no, it isn't.
It's true.
Yeah.
We should said that. I was like, I have to think, am I confident in my mess?
It's unfortunate. Like, people, like, we think we're making our own decisions, but we don't realise that decisions are being made for us every single day.
Yeah.
By people, by things, by things we see, by the government, you know, and they're being made for us every single day, and we're living in this warped utopian kind of society, like in our minds, where I'm the author of my own, you know, but really people
they've authored it for
you. They've told you that now the whole thing is be an entrepreneur, so now everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and they don't, and you know, they want to be an influencer. No offense to influencers, because this is going on YouTube, obviously. But I'm just saying, like people are so confused.
Yeah.
They're so confused, and sometimes also confusion comes as a result because there's so much. Because I always think when I get confused, I always kind of relate it to like when, you know, I love clothes and I love shopping. So every time it's time to go out, I spend 15-20 minutes trying to decide on what to wear because I just have so many clothes in my wardrobe. So I think that at the moment in life is where there's so many, as we said, options and contending idea and ideals coming at us and to us, that we're just so confused, and it's causing a major crisis, and we're seeing it manifest in so many things. We're seeing it manifest in mental health and the deterioration of mental health. We're seeing it physical health. We're seeing it in families and like the breakdown of family units, and what we as Christians and people that still believe in the traditional family unit what it should look like. You know, it's a massive crisis. It's really,
And I think we're now living in a world where people don't want to accept the concept of an objective reality.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone wants to have their own subjective reality because now we're in an era where people are encouraged to be democratic, share your views, be you. And I'm not against being you and all that, but what that is creating on the other end is because we don't want to subject to something that is objective single source of truth.
No one does.
Then we're like, I think this is what I think is right. And then you see social media wars.
Yeah.
When someone has just gone on social media and they've just said, I like apples. And then someone else comes and says, are you saying oranges are bad? I'm like, no. I didn't say oranges are bad. I just said, I like apples.
Yeah.
You know, and then someone else. So, and I think that's what's making the situation even more grim.
Yeah.
And then putting God aside makes it even now go to another level. So yes, there is an identity crisis, and I believe we need to each look into ourselves and just ask, why are we here? I came to this world alone. I'm going to leave this world alone. There is something I was created for. What is that? Why am I here? Yeah, as you said, like the entrepreneurship, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Maybe you are called to be the baker who, bakes sweet things for the entrepreneurs to enjoy so that they can create more ideas.
Yeah.
It's true. Maybe you're created to be the tailor who will tailor clothes for that entrepreneur so that they can look presentable when they're going to a meeting.
Sure.
And by saying tailor and all that, those are roles. I believe those are roles. Those are not like things you can say that's my identity. But I'm just trying to illustrate a point here. But that's what I can say.
Okay. So what would you say to a 16-year-old girl that is trying to still figure out her identity, that's a bit confused because obviously the world we live in? What would your advice be to her?
I think one of the practical advice points that I can give is try and associate yourself with older people, and not just older people who you can see the results of their lives. It's like they're producing good fruit. They are walking the walk, and and why I say that, even in the Bible, I remember Paul was the one who told Timothy, his son in the faith, like, this is the gift that we through the laying on of hands, this is your gift. It's like Paul was directing or giving a sense of direction to Timothy not to forget his gift, and that's because he had experience, he was older. So I think that's one of the things I would say. Identify someone, even if not in your circle. Maybe there's a friend or a mom to a friend's friend, just someone out there who you think will be a good source of advice and mentorship and just to help you navigate because that's quite, I admit it's quite a confusing time, and it's not easy to navigate when you're
Okay.
I would kind of say to trust in the source first. I'd say, like, God says we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. So, like, if we know that, we should operate from that place. We
Yeah.
shouldn't be operating from what Instagram's saying or anything else, because they are changing all the time. One week this is nice, the next week something else is better. But God's word is just steadfast, it just stays, doesn't it? So I would say to stick to that. And also, sorry Yeti, I just love what you said earlier about adding value to the world. It doesn't matter, what GCSEs you take or what you're studying or what you're doing for work, as much as whatever you're doing, just that conscious decision to add value to the world whilst just knowing that you're already enough.
Yeah.
Without the decisions that you're making, you're already enough.
As you are.
Yeah.
That is it. That's it. That you are enough, and all that you need, God has already placed it within you, and and you're on this journey of life to find it. And don't be in a rush to find it either. Take your time, enjoy the process of it as well. Don't get so lost in the journey and get into the so-called destination that you're not taking note of all the things that are happening and enjoying those times just in time. But really, as you said, recognizing that you are enough anyway. And I think that's the foundation of it, knowing that I am who God says I am, and all those things are. I'm blessed and highly favoured. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm the head and never the tail. So many things that the Word of God, and it goes again back to what Meg said about staying rooted in a source, staying. How did you put it?
I can't remember now.
But
going back to the source
of it, and really digging into God's word, but ultimately just take your time. 16 is young. We are not 16, and we're still
figuring it out.
Yeah, we're still figuring it out. We're still on this journey, and we're still and we're by the grace of God enjoying this journey together. And I would add to what Christine says and said, not just only finding adults and but also finding a community of friends, like-minded friends that you can be open and honest and transparent with, that will not lead you astray, that will pray with you, that will cry with you if it's that's what you need to do, that will laugh with you if that's at that time what you need. But finding a group of friends, a community of people that want and desire the same things that you want and desire in life, which is to fulfill purpose, to be aligned with Christ, and again to add value in whatever you're doing.
Thank you. So we've got getting a mentor is what you said. You said staying true, staying connected to the source, and then you said just taking your time, enjoying the moment, and also being around like-minded people. And I think those things are also very, very, very important in discovering who you are. I would just add a bit more to all that they've all said, and it's essentially, for me, it's first of all, like Meg said, going back to the source. And I say that because we live in a fallen world. People sometimes, based on their moods, can spew negativity, they can spew their hate within them on you. So I would advise as well, just to be like Gitten, they say, just go and find out what God says about you, and make sure you always read it, because the more you read something in the practical sense, the more you read something, and the more you read something, the more you know, the more it sticks. So if you only read, for instance, you only need to read the Bible once, but then 90%, so that's 10% of the time you read the Bible, 90% of the time you're surrounded by the untrue things about you. So they're not always negative, but they're just untrue about you. Chances are you're going to go in that direction. That's not true. And then by the time you figure out, it's never too late, because it's just, time is not in our hands. So for me, is always being intentional with, if you're always getting maybe untrue things that you know are untrue, they don't match with what God says about you, feel free, be confident to just step aside and find the places, the spaces that speak the truth. And I think that's just it, because it's I think it's a balance of truth and lie, because if we all just, if you knew the truth and stayed around the truth, then it will just help you walk confidently. Because for me, I'm going to be very real, it's not the easiest thing, especially if your identity is not like the general, it doesn't match like the general opinion. It sometimes, I find it quite challenging, but I think it's very important to just keep going. It's like a bit of a battle sometimes, but it's not in that sense. But just keep going, and you'll be fine. There's no rush. You don't have to control how it ends, because that's not for you to decide. But just bit by bit, being true, being honest, staying close to the truth, the source, and surrounding yourself with really just well-meaning people, because you need people. You can't do it alone. You need people. And so that's it really. So thanks for watching, and we hope you've all gotten a thing or two. Leave your comments. Let's continue this conversation, because hey, the identity conversation is huge. I don't think we've even covered a tenth of it. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Like, follow, and subscribe.
And share. Bye.
Love at the dawn, love in the sunrise, high over all. Love in the first breath, love at the last.